thing. Instead, it just draws it once to an image buffer, and then just redraws the image every single time, which is a lot better for saving time on the rendering, rather than, yeah. Well, the thing is I load... Okay, up here, we'll start at the top of the setup. This is where I get my renderer from. This is the screen. This is like the master background or whatever. This is what shows it in the window. This is what the window is tied to. I had a huge list of sprites, and so rather than typing out the names of every single one of them like 9 different times, I created a file, a list file in the games directory that lists all of the sprites that are in the building sprites file or folder. I get an array of the texture names. I import them from the file into the strings, and then then I loop through all of the strings, and I load up all of the textures based off of the names in the strings, so that way I don't have to sit there and just keep typing everything out. And I just need to increase the size of the array, increase the length of the loops, and the number of strings, and I can load in more tiles as the tile count increases, and it'll be super easy. And then here, I have it where it sets up the actual roof layout. If J, which is the vertical coordinates, if J is equal to 0, that's going to be the northern edge of the building, so I need to use the north walls. And then, of course, if it's at the end of the array, it needs to be the south walls, east walls, west walls. If it's in the middle, just make it filler right there. Over here, I have some overloads, or not overloads, but overrides, I should say, for what this loop up here set up. Because I have some specific corner sprites. Forgive me if you hear crying. I then, the roof plan is then laid out. I then set all of the specific textures for each individual roof tile, or for each individual tile array. I then set it here in this loop, just based off of the type that it is. And again, I was setting the type to it here. That's what this is there's an enumerator in the tile? Yeah, the tile types. I have this enumerator here, which allows me to give a numeric definition to each of the individual tiles. I set those there, load them up here. I pass, the building class stores all of the textures in memory and just passes them as references to each individual tile. I get the full width and height of the building. I create a blank texture, which allows me to do the texture access... Oh wait, texture access target? Let's try changing that to streaming. Because... Oh no, it needs to be as target. Okay. It's target or else it can't be rendered to. Okay. My bad on that. I got a little bit distracted there. But this creates a blank texture. It's just a blank black texture. If it fails to create, if something was wrong in here and it triggered a fail, it returns a null. So if the roof image is null, then it lets me know and it stops the setup process. Now here's where we get into the tricky parts, because this is an area where it's working in one section, but it's not working in this section. And that is the render target changing. Now when we initially set up the render target, it's basically nulled. It's not trying to store the render in memory, it is pushing it out to the window. So you don't... The render target is set to the window by default with this null flag. So you set up your render target to be the roof image texture that I've just created here. We clear everything out, make sure the memory buffer's empty. We then draw the roof plan to that image. The renderer is pointed at that texture file, it renders it to memory, it draws it in there. And then we set the renderer back to being the window again. And then, of course, your player occupied, that's going to be a flag, so that I get kind of like the like XCOM UFO defense effect, where if you have someone inside of a building, it basically takes the layers of the building off so you can see inside. Yeah, it's a bug somewhere, but I'm not sure where it is. And the crazy thing is, I literally copied that exact code over here. I copied it from this, which is exactly what I use to draw the map. That background map that scrolls around, that's exactly how I draw it. I use this same code here. And, just as a result of something, I don't know what it is, it's not working in this particular instance. So, and I don't know what the issue is. Maybe if I just take out the cameras? Just leave the... Just kind of leave everything as it sits? Maybe? It says the building is rendered here. Oops. But it should be showing up right here in this area. And it's not showing up if I attempt to use the roof image. Looking at the game rendering, we have the world map being rendered first. Then we have the building being rendered. At least we should be getting the roof of the building being rendered. I'm not using Allegro anymore. Yeah, this is a new C++ application, but I'm not using Allegro. This is SDL2, the Simple Direct Media layer, or Simple Direct Media Library 2. The weird thing is that it, I mean, you run it, and the render change works the first time, because that's how this is all drawn. Like, all this imagery here, you know, these different splits in the lines and everything, these are all separate 25 by 25 layer arrays that have been rendered once, drawn to memory, and stored, and are now being drawn from memory as a static image that's being cropped by the camera. Yeah, I've actually been struggling with SDL2 now for a couple of years. I actually burned out for a while, but just getting this camera working at all has very much raised my spirits. So yeah. I mainly switched over from to SDL2 from SDL1 because SDL1 didn't support multiple monitors properly, and so if I attempted to do like full screen applications or windowed applications or anything like that, they'd show up in the middle of the screen just kind of like this. And you can't see my other monitor, but it kind of splits right here at this part. But I wasn't able to move the window anywhere, and it just left it stuck. HTML5 canvas. I've been told a lot about that. I don't know. I feel like I should start getting into HTML5, at least to a degree. But yeah, it wasn't... I don't know. It's web code, and... I mean, in general, web code is generally slower than CPU code when you're trying to do stuff like this. But, I mean, maybe that's changed. Maybe it's changed. But, yeah, so whatever is happening, we're not getting this... See, this thing returns, right? Yeah, 0 on success or -1 on an error. I love this feature about NetBeans. This is the only reason why I haven't left NetBeans, is because I can just hold down Control, click on an API function, and it'll pull it up in the header for me automatically with its documentation right above it, if they remember to put it in. So... yeah. But then, okay, so if it's... Let's just see if this is, if... that is less than 0. Put out a console input. How does a building puke? There we go. Let's do proper punctuation here. Let's throw in a little question mark. There we go. Alright. It's not returning a false. So... yeah, alright. You can do 3D games in Canvas now? Dang. Now, with it being HTML5, does that require any special, like, browser plugins or anything? Because I know they were trying to attempt something like that with Flash. Or no, it was like a Flash with a Unity extension or something like that? They could actually do, like, 3D renders. Oh, you just need... You need one browser extension, huh? You know, the one thing I do know about, yeah. Well, I actually remember when I was working in IT at the time, but a customer of mine called me up and was like, "Hey, I just wanted to ask about something. Do you know anything about this whole Firefox not supporting Flash anymore? And does that mean that I'm not going to be able to read the news?" And I was like, "No, you can still read your news. But what's this about Flash?" He goes, "Well, I just saw a thing on it on the news the other day, and I went ahead and looked it up, and it was Firefox announcing that they were officially killing all support for Flash due to several of their employees getting their personal identities compromised by the Italian mafia due to exploits that had been in the API ever since its first day." And at that point, Google Chrome had already started shutting down any support on Flash at all. And from what I understand, it's not like it was a bad thing to go out anyway. So, I don't know. But ultimately, all of this is rendering correctly, or at least supposedly rendering correctly. So, yeah, I feel like getting bought out by Adobe was probably the worst thing that happened to poor Flash. Because it used to be a Macromedia, and it was Macromedia Shockwave and Macromedia Flash. Flash was their video player, Shockwave was the game player. But yeah, I mean, that when Adobe bought them both, like, Shockwave almost died immediately, and Flash continued to struggle on, despite the fact it was never intended to be interactable. It was just meant to be animation. But... ugh. Yeah, too much code to go through off the top of your head. Yeah, I'm afraid. That's kind of what happens a lot. So it happens a lot with me on these streams. I will